We are just 2 days away from the Philadelphia Eagles preseason finale, and for fans there isn't much to see, but for the men currently on that roster, this may be their final chance to not only audition for a place on this Eagles team, but for rosters around the NFL. The roster will be cut from 90 down to 53, and there are bound to be some twists and turns along the way, but with just one game, just one opportunity left for some of the biggest underdogs on this team to prove their worth, to show that they belong on this team. Here is one last final 53-man roster projection. But before we get started though guys, if you enjoy this sort of content, if you've been riding with us throughout the off-season, make sure you leave a like and hit that subscribe button. It means the absolute world to us here at Philly Sports Network. And don't forget, you can get your daily dose of Philadelphia sports coverage from myself and all of our writers at phillysportsnetwork.com. And one last note before we get into this 53-man roster breakdown, we will see you live on Thursday evening from 6:30 Eastern to give you the End Zone live stream. One last watch along live stream. These streams have been amazing. If you've not been part of them guys, now's the time to join. You've been missing out. Over 15,000 of you have tuned in so far. We're going to have more giveaways, more analysis, and this will be our most interactive stream yet. So if you can't watch the Eagles preseason stream, if you want to have a really unique in-game experience, just head to our YouTube channel at 6:30 Eastern on Thursday night. I hope to see you there. We're going to start things off with the most important position on the team, and there are no surprises here. I did have a theory that I think the Eagles could try and IR stash Nate Sudfeld in order to keep 4 quarterbacks on the roster, but to do that they need to keep Nate Sudfeld on the roster for week 1, and the same applies for Crayvon LeBlanc, so we'll get to that a little bit later. So as of right now, the quarterback position is nice and solidified, but that doesn't mean that Clayton Thorson can't shake things up. He was kind of stripped of an opportunity last Thursday when his shift was pretty much rained off, but in the week before that, as we all know, Thorson showed leaps and bounds of development, and if you can do the same again, there's every chance the Eagles try to do something different. But for Thorson, this could very much be an audition elsewhere as well. If he does get exposed to waivers, if he can put together a couple of strong preseason performances, there is a chance another team will snatch him up. But as of right now, we're going to go with Carson Wentz QB1. QB2 is obviously Josh McCown after he took to the NFL like a duck to water, returning as if the 40-year-old had never been away, and the injured Nate Sudfeld, who may, just may, start the year on IR. The running back position is genuinely a tricky one, but I don't think there's going to be any shocks here either. Corey Clement not only returned to 11-on-11 action recently, but showed a lot of promise in preseason action against the Ravens. The first 3 spots are all but locked down, leaving Clement with the simple task of doing just enough to sustain the RB4 spot, beating out Wendell Smallwood, who continues to do absolutely nothing with his opportunity, and a flurry of guys all fighting for either a potential RB5 spot or a kick returner spot. For this projection though, we're going to keep 4 running backs on the roster to begin with and see if we can stash a couple of those guys on the practice squad. Moving on to the offensive line, and it's all the usual suspects. The main problem I've got though is what to do with Stefan Wisniewski, because at the minute it's a rock and a hard place. The guy got pushed back to guard after a dreadful move inside to center. Nate Herbig was even getting opportunities over him, and to me it seems like the Eagles are either going to go with the veteran or they're going to go with Matt Pryor, who has had more flags than an opening ceremony for the Olympic Games. The switch makes sense here. I think Wisniewski, as much as I've said he's not going to make the roster, that's been my hot take sort of all off season long, the Eagles kind of need reliability, and if one of their guards does go down, they're not going to have anyone serviceable at guard behind Halapoulivaati Vaitai, who while has dominated so far at right guard, they could do with that extra swing guy, someone that could fill in for Kelsey, or optimistically Sayamalo as well. So at the minute, Wisniewski does sort of have that inside route to the roster, but that can all change in week 4, especially if Pryor can get his act together, especially if a guy like Keegan Render or Nate Herbig can prove themselves worthy at centre. Tight end spot again is a bit difficult to read because we don't know what the situation is with Richard Rodgers, and if the team do want to keep hold of him and place him on IR, he again has to be on the roster by week 1, but I don't think that's the case. If I'm honest, at this point it's going to be Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, obviously the leading tandem, and then behind them they need someone for 13 personnel. It's going to come down to who gives them the most value. Is it going to be Joshua Perkins, who has been around this team for a little bit longer, or someone like Alex Ellis, who's proven himself as a receiving option, catching a touchdown in last week's loss to Baltimore? It's tough, and there is a chance they do keep both of them like they have done in years past. I keep reminding you all of that 2014 season. The Eagles like developing tight end talent, they like having options available, but I do feel at this point they're going to keep 3 because they could do with that depth elsewhere. And at the minute, if I'm going to put my money on a player, it's going to be Perkins because of that familiarity, but don't write it off just yet. I would love to see Alex Ellis ball out. I think he does have a higher upside. He's shown more in a couple of weeks than I've seen from Joshua Perkins, who, while he's developed as a route runner, in my opinion, just hasn't quite got it all together just yet. So any combination of those two, but at the minute, the money's going to be on Perkins, but if you want an outside bet, I like Alex Ellis. We move swiftly onto wide receivers, and I have loved, absolutely loved, the battle at the bottom of this depth chart. From preseason week 1 all the way through, it has been nothing short of exhilarating, and the two names that stand out for me, I don't think anyone can debate anymore, are Greg Ward Jr. and Marken Michel. Behind the front four of Jeffrey, Jackson, Aguilar and Arcega-Whiteside, it just seems obvious to me. I don't think Mack Hollins has proven anything. Receivers essentially get given the same routes in preseason. You're not going to see a deep threat from Mack Hollins, which is where he made his pay dirt at UNC and even as a rookie. But on those same routes, those same in-breaking routes, those curls, Greg Ward Jr. has done more, Marken Michel's done more, and has some more versatility as a slot guy that can really reap the rewards of yards after the catch in open space. That's a guy you want on screens and swing passes and all the rest of it in that Golden Tate kind of role. Whereas Greg Ward's development as someone that has been on this roster for 3 years trying to make the cut, third time's a charm, I'm going with Ward. The Eagles carry 6 wide receivers, Ward and Michel lining up behind the front four. Defensive tackle, and again, I don't think there are going to be many surprises here. The team have built a really formidable depth chart. You've got Fletcher Cox and Malik Jackson, who has been a little bit quiet this preseason, and that's something I'm a little bit disappointed about. With Timmy Jernigan, who is in the opposite situation and is raring to go behind him, and the 2 depth guys, the guys who will be replacing the Bo Allen and Destiny Vio of 2017, will be Hassan Ridgeway and Trayvon Hester. Hester has flashed again in preseason. Ridgeway was acquired during the NFL draft in exchange for a 7th round pick, and people forget that Vio and Allen accounted for over 50% of defensive snaps that season. They missed that depth during 2018, and they're not going to let it happen again. So expect Ridgeway and Hester to both play key roles in 2019. Defensive end, and it's safe to say that preseason standout Deshaun Hall is making this roster. If he doesn't, I don't want to say anything too ludicrous because I'm probably going to end up doing it, but I think after completely obliterating anyone in his path over the last 3 weeks, the Eagles would be just silly not to reward him. This should negate the need for veteran help and erase the idea of someone like Connor Barwin rejoining the team. If an injury does pop up, I still think the grizzled outside linebacker who has been working on a transition down to defensive end would make a return. There are question marks over Josh Sweat, who battled injury just a little bit a couple of weeks ago. It's nothing too serious, but certainly something to be aware of. And I don't want to be that guy, but I've seen more out of Deshaun Hall than I have out of Josh Sweat. And Sweat has been a bit more under the radar. He flashed very nicely against Taylor Lewan. I think Sharif Miller's done a good job, but that skill set is still fairly limited. So the Eagles' defensive ends may feel some burden, but Deshaun Hall against the lower string guys has been absolutely dominant. I think these will be the 6 guys that they take into 2019. Linebacker again is a tricky spot to read, purely for the fact that if Cameron Grugier-Hill is to be stashed on IR, he has to be on that week 1 roster, which means you're essentially putting a gamble on a guy like Alex Singleton or TJ Edwards clearing waivers, landing on your practice squad to then be promoted. And there is a chance that happens, but as of right now, I feel like the position is going to look like this. LJ Fort has done a brilliant job of proving himself worthy of a roster spot, and Nate Jerry's development kind of speaks for itself. The team is still high on him. Zach Brown's been a little bit quieter than I would have liked to see in preseason, but with Camu out of the picture, I do think what we're going to see is Grugier-Hill reverted to IR and then a promotion of one of 2 guys. It's Singleton, it's Edwards, and they have both played their tails off this preseason. The former CFL standout, the 2017 13 CFL Defensive Player of the Year, has been great on special teams, made some nice tackles and forced a fumble, but the growth of Edwards, this sudden explosion of comfort and confidence, you can't miss it, and you want him to do well, you want him to succeed, so it's going to be one of those two guys depending on roster needs, but as of right now, these will be the 5 making the roster, but expect Camus to go to IR and one of those last two guys in Edwards or Singleton to jump up. Cornerbacks are where things begin to get interesting because just like Camus, just like Sudfeld, the Eagles have to keep LeBlanc on that opening day roster in order to stash him on IR. So with that in mind, here's how I think the position will shake out. The wild card here is going to be Orlando Scandrick. Can they release him and bring him back when LeBlanc's placed on IR to be that backup nickel corner, or will they instead look to someone like Josh Hawkins or Jeremiah McKinnon, neither of whom have really been exceptional in preseason? I think the safest bet would be to bring back Scandrick, but as of right now, it's situation normal. Jalen Mills is going to start the year on the physically unable to perform list. That buys the Eagles at least some time to figure out who their starting CB2 is going to be, but as of right now, this is how the position's going to look. It's going to be Cravon LeBlanc week 1, stashed on IR, and probably Orlando Scandrick brought in to take his place. The safety position is a simple one to figure out. The 4 most talented safeties make the roster to form a veteran quartet of starter level production. No more needs to be said here. This is a dream scenario for the Birds. Sunday, little podcast reference there, has had a great preseason and training camp, and Jonathan Cyprian in his limited time with the team has shown that he can get back to that form where he once amassed 4 consecutive years of 100 plus tackles. The Eagles are in safe hands at safety, and I think it's about time the sporadic era of Trey Sullivan comes to an end. Specialists are the exact same as well. Jake Elliott, Cam Johnston and Rick Lovato, the 3 Musketeers, return once more. Practice squads are always an absolute roulette wheel to figure out because the Eagles are obviously going to be looking elsewhere to see which players don't make the cut and if they can maybe snag someone back onto their roster who they had their eye on pre-draft. But guys from this team you're looking to stick on will be Edwards and Singleton, will be Clayton Thorson, will be Boston Scott, may even be someone like offensive lineman Brett Toth, who after serving 1 year in the military was allowed to pursue his NFL dream, now caught on with the Eagles roster with one final shot to prove his worth. But I want to know who you guys think makes this final roster. Am I right? Am I wrong? Are there any wacky decisions that I've made, or perhaps not? I need you guys to let me know down in the description. From myself, Liam Jenkins, thank you so much for all of your support this off-season. We are so close to football once again. I hope to see as many of you as possible on Thursday. I'll see you soon.